Data is definitely dead at the end of the movie. But what we learn at the very end of the movie is that the B4's memory download all of a sudden is starting to work. And the B4 is all of a sudden not quite as dopey as we thought he was. And we see that there's hope that the B4 is going to evolve and is going to take these memories of Data and perhaps slowly approach Data in terms of his intellect and personality.
So in a previous video where I discussed the possibility of Brent Spiner reprising his role as Data in the Star Trek Picard show, a lot of you were quick to point out that Data died at the end of Star Trek Nemesis, even going as far as to accusing me that I forgot the events of the film. I assure you, I did not forget the events of the film, and you are right to say that vanilla, regular old Data is dead. He is completely destroyed. But the likelihood of Brent Spiner making an appearance in the show is very high, and he would most likely be playing the Data role. There's a lot of evidence to support that I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about right now. Now, some of the stuff is beta canon, but we already know that it is already influencing the Star Trek Picard production in some regards. So let's talk a little bit about all the different things that are influencing this possibility of this return, and let's break all that stuff down. Let's jump into it. Okay, so the very first piece is obviously what the intent was with the production team of Star Trek Nemesis. And you heard Rick Berman talking at the beginning of this video where his intent there is potentially the Data character essentially overtaking the B4, positronic, memories and basically becoming Data again, or possibly even being a split person where it's B4, but now he remembers everything that Data did, and maybe he's like a split person between two different people. That would be kind of interesting. But that seemed to be like what the intent was behind Star Trek Nemesis. That's what they alluded to at the end with B4 singing Blue Skies, which is what the song that Data did at the Riker and Troy's wedding at the beginning of Star Trek Nemesis. So they were definitely implying that rather heavily. And in the behind-the-scenes stuff, that's obviously what Rick Berman was feeling. Also, there is a quick precedence for this, which is basically what they did with Spock and McCoy inside of The Wrath of Khan, where he did the mind meld and put essentially his Katra, his soul, into McCoy's body, thinking that potentially there would be a way for either McCoy to just remember who Spock was, or that they would be able to save his character. They kind of put that ace in the hole, essentially, so that in case they wanted to bring Spock back, they had an ability to do that, which is exactly what they did in the search for Spock in the next film. And everyone pretty much knows that Star Trek Nemesis was kind of a redo of The Wrath of Khan, so it's clear that they were trying to follow those same kinds of story beats and setting up the ability to return Data to the crew in the event that another TNG film was made. Unfortunately, there was never another TNG movie made, so they never really went down that path, but that did not stop the beta canon stuff from starting to pick up where that film left off. Now, let's first look at Star Trek Online. And as I reported in a previous video about a week ago, we do know for sure that the Star Trek Picard production team has sat down with the developers of Star Trek Online just to get some ideas about the lore and storyline that they've put into their game so they could kind of pick and choose what they would like to, utilize for the show, and not necessarily line them up perfectly, but just to see what kind of roads that they have already treaded so that they maybe don't have to rewrite everything. So, with that being said, in the Path to 2409 lore series that Star Trek Online put out prior to the game's release in 2385, it has the Soong Foundation and really the Daystrom Institute unlocking all of Data's knowledge and memories inside of the B4 unit, I guess you could call it, being, I don't know, whatever word you want to use there. And essentially, his personality completely overtakes B4's and erases B4 essentially from, history. And from there, this new Data individual then helps the Soong Foundation and the Daystrom Institute recreate the emotion chip that Dr. Soong had. And essentially, he's right back to where he was previously as Data. Then in 2386, this Data actually petitions Starfleet Command to get his reinstatement into Starfleet and get the position as captain, which is approved. Now, all of this, whether by coincidence or by accident, lines up perfectly with the Countdown comic that we saw as a prequel thing to Star Trek 2009, in which Data is the captain of the Enterprise during that time period. And that kind of connects everything back in together where the Star Trek Picard show is going to be, which we know is dealing with the destruction of Romulus. And I believe all of that stuff will be featured inside of this show, primarily being because that Alex Kurtzman was involved with writing Star Trek Countdown, he was involved with writing Star Trek 2009, and now he's involved with the development of Star Trek Picard. These are ideas that he himself and possibly his creative team came up with, so of course he's probably going to use those. So the likelihood of Data being back inside of Star Trek Picard is very, very, very high. Now, do I think that they're going to go straight up vanilla Data? I don't think so, because Alex Kurtzman and the Star Trek team right now seems to really, really enjoy the idea of people being split between two worlds. They've done this with Spock. They're doing this with Michael Burnham. They did this with Ash Tyler and Vought. They really like this idea of a character having to deal with two different personalities and being a part of two different worlds, and this kind of drama that attaches itself to that. So I think what we'd see is a Data that not only is remembering and feeling and being a part of everything that Data had before, but also being B4. He's kind of struggled a little bit with his own identity and trying to figure out who he is, and maybe he's a whole new being. Kind of like what we saw a little bit of with Vision, from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I know people may not watch that stuff, but essentially Vision was a connection of Ultron's personality and then also Jarvis's personality, and he became Vision. I think we may see something like that where it's B4's personality, Data's personality, and then now maybe it's a whole new person. Maybe he has a completely different name now, that he's this whole new character, but it's essentially both of those things together. But that's what I think is going to happen. So I didn't forget about what happened at the end of Star Trek Nemesis, nor do I think necessarily that the production team has forgotten what happened at the end of Star Trek Nemesis, but I appreciate everyone pointing that out in the most polite way that they could. A couple people were kind of mean about it, but that's all right. But this is a reality that I've been living with for a little while, that Data is just back because I've been playing Star Trek Online and he just exists in that universe. So for me, it wasn't like a thing, but I understand why some of you were like, what the heck? Why are you talking about Data being back? He's supposed to be dead. I don't understand what you're talking about. It should just be B4. But that's kind of all of this evidence kind of tied in together. And the final bit that I want to go ahead and share with you, which is the actual words from Brent Spiner himself.
In Star Trek, anything can happen. I mean, we could, find little pieces of Data having been blown up and put him back together, and it's Data. Or we could find Lore, who still exists. He's still alive down in the hull of our ship, and do something to his brain or whatever. But I think Data proper is gone. And if we ever do another one, which is anybody's guess at this point, I would guess no myself, but then I don't make those decisions except where I'm concerned. It's possible that B4 has grown a lot since we saw him last, or it's possible that all kinds of things are possible. It's Star Trek, for God's sakes.
Okay, guys and gals, that wraps up today's video. I just wanted to do this kind of a quick clarification and explain where Data may be if he does have a role inside of Star Trek Picard. I wanted to kind of clear the air a little bit and maybe do a little explanation there. So that's what I think. Anyways, what do you guys and gals think? Throw up your ideas down below. Do you think it's going to be B4 with a little bit of Data? Do you think it's just going to be Data, or do you think it's going to be this whole new being that has all of these memories and personalities kind of jumbled up into one, and it's a whole new character? I'm curious to hear what all of you guys and gals think about this. Throw up your stuff down below. Let's get this conversation started. Live long and prosper, my Trekkies.